Nadia's heartbeat raced as she stepped onto Marcus's private yacht, her satin gown billowing gently around her. 8 months pregnant, glowing with anticipation. She thought this would be the night to mark a new chapter in her life, a night to celebrate their love. The candles flickered, casting a soft glow on the polished deck, and champagne flowed freely from the crystal flutes. She smiled, feeling as though everything was falling into place, but beneath the glittering surface, something felt wrong. It was in the air, the way Marcus was acting, too calm, too distracted. She watched as he spoke to Seline, his so-called friend, but it wasn't the kind of conversation she'd expect between old friends. No, the words they exchanged were far too intense, too secretive. As Nadia approached them, she caught the tail end of their conversation. Marcus's voice was low, almost a whisper. "We can't back out now. We've come too far." Celine's response was cold, almost calculating. "I know, she'll be out of the picture soon enough." Nadia froze, her chest tightening. What were they talking about? Her instincts screamed that something was wrong. Marcus hadn't noticed her, but Seline had. The way she turned to face Nadia with a sly smile sent a chill down her spine. It wasn't the smile of a friend. It was the smile of someone who'd already made up their mind about her fate. Nadia tried to back away, to retreat from the horror slowly creeping into her mind. But before she could move, Celine's cold, unforgiving hand shot out and shoved her forward. Nadia screamed, but her voice was drowned by the roar of the yacht's engine. Her body plunged into the icy darkness below, the water swallowing her whole. She flailed for a moment, the weight of her pregnant belly dragging her down as the freezing ocean closed over her. Her heart hammered in her chest, but the shock was worse than the cold. The yacht continued its slow drift away, the sound of the engine fading with each passing second. Nadia's breath came in ragged gasps as she struggled against the pull of the sea, fighting to stay afloat. But the weight of the waterlogged gown and the exhaustion from her frantic efforts was too much. Her mind grew hazy as she sank deeper. Her screams were swallowed by the depths above her. The yacht didn't even hesitate. No one looked overboard. Marcus didn't glance back, didn't even flinch. His back was turned, a cigar now lit between his lips, the soft glow of the ember illuminating the emptiness in his eyes. There was no sign of guilt, no remorse, only the cold indifference of a man who had already discarded her. Celine's laughter rang through the night air as the boat roared further into the distance. It was the sound of victory, of a plan fulfilled. But Nadia wasn't finished yet. The cold water burned against her skin, but she would not go quietly. She wouldn't let them win. "Marcus," she whispered, but no one was there to hear her. The words fell into the ocean, lost, as the yacht continued on its path. Nadia's body was dragged deeper into the black abyss. The waves pounded against her, relentless, unforgiving. The cold water seemed to grow colder with each passing second, her heart sinking along with her body. Every instinct told her to swim, to fight, but the weight of her gown, the strain of the baby inside her, and the overwhelming shock made it harder to keep going. With every kick, the hope of someone, anyone, seeing her, of someone throwing her a life buoy or even glancing back, faded into nothing. There was no rescue. The yacht had already vanished from view, Celine's laughter still echoing in her ears. It was as if she never existed. Nadia gasped for air, but the cold sea filled her lungs instead. The pain of betrayal was sharper than the freezing waters that enveloped her. How had it come to this? She had been married to Marcus for so long, loved him with everything she had, but now she realized it wasn't love he had given her. It was a lie. A rough hand grabbed her, pulling her from the water. Nadia couldn't see the face of the man who saved her. Her eyes barely open, the world spinning. He dragged her onto his weathered boat, each motion harsh and unfamiliar. She coughed violently as water poured from her lungs, her body convulsing. She gasped, trying to focus on the figure above her. The world was dim and blurry, but the life inside her was strong, too strong to let go. The fisherman didn't speak at first, just pressing his hands over her chest, pushing, until water finally came out in a violent rush. Nadia gasped for breath. Her baby kicked fiercely, as if it knew the danger had passed. She wasn't dead, she was alive, and so was her child. "Where am I?" she croaked, barely able to form the words. The fisherman didn't answer immediately. He simply looked down at her with tired, weathered eyes. "Alive," he said softly, his voice thick with exhaustion. Nadia stared at him, trying to make sense of everything. She'd been left for dead. But she wasn't. She was alive. And so was her baby. But now what? Bruised, cold, and drenched, Nadia sat up slowly, her hand over her stomach, feeling the life inside her. The ocean had taken so much from her dignity, her love, her trust, but it hadn't taken her strength. It hadn't taken her will to survive. She looked out at the shore, her thoughts cold and calculating. Marcus thought she was gone. The world thought she had drowned. A tragic end to a woman who had once been the picture of love and grace, but was exactly the way they wanted it. They had tried to erase her. But now she wasn't just surviving, she was planning. Her eyes darkened with a new resolve. She wasn't going back to him as his wife. She was going back to destroy everything he had built. She would burn his world to the ground. "They think I'm gone," she whispered to herself, her voice steady. "Let them." And with that, she turned and walked away, her mind set on revenge. It was time for them to learn what happens when you push someone too far. The empire they'd built would crumble, and Nadia would be the one to tear it down. Nadia turned to Julian, her estranged half-brother, a relentless investigative journalist with a buried grudge and a secret obsession with revenge. Nadia didn't cry when Julian opened the door. He didn't need to. The look on his face said enough. He didn't ask why she was alive. He didn't ask how she'd survived the crash or why she was back. His first question, "Why did you ever trust Marcus?" That's when she knew he'd known more than he ever let on. Inside his apartment, walls were covered in old photos, newspaper clippings, and printed emails. Marcus's face circled in red. Celine's name underlined in black. Nadia's death certificate was in a frame. Julian wasn't shocked she'd survived. He was shocked she hadn't seen the truth sooner. They didn't waste time. Julian handed her a file full of login passwords, old medical scans, and emails between Marcus and bribed doctors. Forged medical reports told lies about her mental state. Her pregnancy was labeled non-viable, even when it was healthy. Everything had been planned. Her fall wasn't an accident. The disappearance wasn't random. They'd been rewriting her story before she even realized it. Julian whispered things no one else could have known, like how Marcus offered money to cover the fake death and how Seline posed as her medical proxy. Nadia watched her own death flicker on a laptop screen. It wasn't just betrayal. It was erasure. They didn't just want her gone. They wanted her story, her name, her life. And they nearly pulled it off. Then Julian clicked on a folder that had been locked for years. He cracked the password. Inside were financial statements, shell companies and wiring logs. Nadia's eyes widened. Celine's name was everywhere. She wasn't just living a lie. She was laundering millions through Nadia's inheritance, hiding it behind fake companies tied to her name. Nadia sat in the parked car outside the mansion gates, staring through tinted windows. Her heart clenched as she saw Seline laughing with decorators on the balcony, the same balcony where Marcus once promised her forever. Seline moved like she owned the place, barefoot, wearing Nadia's silk robe, drinking from Nadia's crystal glass. She even wore the same scent. It was all wrong. That wasn't her home anymore. It was a stolen stage for someone else's lie. Inside, hidden security footage played on Julian's laptop. Seline had turned Nadia's dream house into her personal palace. She changed nothing, kept the paintings, the couch, even the baby room furniture Nadia picked out. Only now the crib was filled with fake gifts and press clippings. Seline had copied Nadia's shopping lists, leaving notes like pregnancy craving, vanilla cake, in Nadia's handwriting. She wasn't just pretending to be pregnant, she was pretending to be Nadia. Marcus, on the other hand, was busy planning a sympathy-fueled proposal. He hired PR agents to shape the story. Tragic loss leads to new beginnings. The media was already being fed lines about a strong man recovering from heartbreak. But Nadia saw it for what it really was, performance. Marcus didn't look sad in the pictures. He looked focused, calculated. This wasn't grief. It was strategy. Then Julian handed her a flash drive. "You need to see this." On the screen was an encrypted file buried deep in legal records. It took minutes to open, but when it did, Nadia froze. It was a trust document, a billion-dollar inheritance linked to her unborn child. Not Marcus, not Seline. Her child, the key to a fortune no one was supposed to find. Nadia's fingers trembled as she read the trust file. It was written by Marcus's late father. The document was clear. Whoever had a legitimate child with Marcus, born in wedlock, would automatically inherit the majority of the estate. Nadia had been that woman. Her child had been that heir. Everything started to make sense. Why the sudden push for separation? Why the lies, the staged fall, the fake diagnosis? It wasn't just about jealousy. It was about money, control, power. Seline could never be the rightful heir bringer. She wasn't married to Marcus, and Marcus's father made sure no woman could manipulate the empire unless she followed his rules. But Nadia had, and her child growing inside her had been the golden ticket. That's why they needed her gone. Not dead, not broken, legally vanished. A missing person couldn't claim anything, and a baby never born couldn't inherit. Every detail now screamed truth. The lies in the reports, the silent treatment for Marcus before the accident, the sudden PR campaign painting Seline as a miracle woman carrying hope. It was all planned to remove Nadia and replace her with a puppet. But the puppet wasn't enough. Not without the heir. Julian leaned closer, showing her another file, a hidden draft will, never filed but clearly signed. In it, Marcus's father left everything to Nadia's child, provided proof of birth and marriage existed, and they did. Somewhere in the hospital's hidden backups, the records still lived. Julian promised to find them, but now they had more than revenge. They had legal power. Nadia stared at the documents spread across the table. She could walk into court right now and end it all. Reveal the fraud, burn Marcus and Seline in front of the world. But something held her back. It wasn't fear. It was instinct. If she rushed, they'd twist the story. They'd call her unstable, a liar, a bitter ghost rising from the dead to ruin a new family. The public loved redemption arcs. Marcus and Seline had painted one perfectly. But Nadia, they'd tear her apart. So instead of war, she chose something more dangerous: patience. She moved quietly, transferred small funds from her hidden trust, investing under different names. Julian helped her purchase silent shares in Marcus's company, enough to watch from inside. She didn't need to scream. She needed to dismantle. And that would take silence, control, and timing. Meanwhile, the gala was being planned. Seline wanted to announce her pregnancy to high society with flashing cameras and glitter walls. Nadia smiled. Perfect. A stage was exactly what she needed. But she wouldn't go as herself. She would go as a mystery. A whisper. A ghost they thought they buried. Julian ordered her a custom black diamond mask, elegant but unforgettable. If you're going to haunt them, he said, make sure they remember the moment forever. Nadia slipped it on in front of the mirror. Her eyes burned with something new. Not pain, not fear. Power. The plan was simple. Watch Seline celebrate lies, then pull the rug. But not yet. Not until every guest was watching. Not until every light was on. Not until there was no way out. The gala glittered with golden gossip, but no one expected the storm that walked in, wearing black diamonds. Nadia stepped through the grand entrance, masked like a phantom, wrapped in elegance that screamed mystery and danger. Every heel click on the marble floor echoed like a forgotten memory. She wasn't just there to be seen. She was there to be remembered. People turned, gasped, whispered. The mask shimmered under the chandelier light. But it was her eyes, cold, sharp, haunted, that made them stop breathing. She glided through the ballroom like a rumor made real. Posing as a Dubai investor named Madame Azra, she shook hands with men who once mocked her pain and women who once looked down on her tears. When she reached Marcus, his handshake lingered too long. Something in her perfume, in her poise, shook something inside him. His grip tightened, but his memory failed. He knew that feeling, that scent, that silence in her gaze, but the truth stayed buried. Seline stood nearby, clinging to her glass, her fake baby bump sitting awkwardly under her silver gown. Her eyes followed the mystery woman with rising fear, clutching Marcus's arm tighter. Nadia tilted her head, smiled beneath her mask, and accidentally dropped her glass of red wine at Seline's feet. The splash soaked the silk, red staining the silver like blood. A sharp gasp spread through the room. Marcus rushed to Seline's side, but the woman in black had already turned. She didn't run. She floated out, slow, graceful, deliberate, vanishing into the night like a ghost who had come back only to haunt. Marcus's heart raced. His eyes scanned the room all night. He couldn't sleep, because those eyes, the ones behind the mask, felt like a ghost he once loved and never truly buried. Marcus couldn't shake the feeling. He wandered his mansion like a man haunted by shadows. The next morning, he opened a drawer in his office, searching for nothing but finding everything. A sketch, her face pure, his own pencil strokes, drawn in a time when he still remembered how to love. He had burned every photo, deleted every memory. But this one had survived, tucked away, waiting. His hands trembled. Then came the envelope. No name, no stamp, just a note inside that said, "Truth always returns." He opened his laptop. Emails flooded in, anonymous messages, screenshots, allegations, words like fraud, embezzlement, betrayal. Whispers he once thought were gone had returned, with teeth. Investors were asking questions. Board members were nervous. Stocks dipped slightly, enough to sting. In the quiet, Marcus's hands shook. Meanwhile, miles away, Nadia sat in a small secret apartment surrounded by screens. One showed Marcus's stock price, another showed his calendar, and on the table in front of her sat files, blueprints, and plans, all marked with red ink. But her eyes didn't blink. This wasn't enough. Watching him panic didn't touch the scar he left. It didn't erase the way he let Seline spit lies into the world while Nadia bled alone. Her heart had broken once. Now, she wanted his empire to feel every crack. She leaned forward, clicked a folder. More proof. She was slowly turning into the storm they never saw coming. But even then, something was missing. Her mind kept circling back to Julian, Marcus's brother, the only one who ever whispered the truth. When her phone buzzed, it was a message from Julian. "Come now." "I found it." She left immediately, and when she got there, what he handed her didn't just break her heart again, it ripped it wide open. Julian didn't speak. He simply placed the photograph on the table and stepped back. Nadia stared at it. The room froze. In the photo, a younger Seline sat beside an older man, the hand on her thigh, the necklace around her neck. She didn't have to ask. It was Marcus's father, the same man who had died suddenly just months before Marcus married Seline. Julian handed her a second file, bank transfers, jewelry receipts, travel logs. Seline had been his mistress for years. Nadia's voice broke as she whispered. "Marcus knew, didn't he?" Julian nodded, fully, carefully. Marcus hadn't just married Seline to move on. He married her to keep a secret buried. He knew she was his father's lover. He knew the scandal it would cause, so he married her to shut her up, to lock her in golden silence. But there was more. The pregnancy Seline had used to trap him, completely fake. Julian had proof, medical records all falsified. The doctor had been paid off. The belly was a silicone prosthetic, one she removed every night. There was no baby, no future, just a lie built to secure Celine's grip on Marcus's money, on his empire, and on his guilt. Nadia couldn't breathe. The betrayal didn't just come from one man. It came from an entire family that watched her suffer and said nothing. She packed the documents herself. Every file, every receipt, every lie. She sealed them in an envelope. On the front, in bold red letters, she wrote, "For shareholders only." Julian placed his hand on her shoulder. "Are you ready?" She nodded. But inside, her heart was no longer breaking. It was rebuilding, stronger, sharper, deadlier. Because now, it wasn't about revenge, it was about truth. And exposing every last person who thought they could erase her and walk away clean. Nadia stared into the mirror, no longer seeing the woman who had cried on hospital floors or begged for the truth. She saw power, control, justice. Her lawyer called that morning. Her identity was fully reinstated. Her name was back on every document. They tried to strip her from the will. It was revalidated. Her child's inheritance? Untouchable now. And Celine's fraud? Every fake report. Every wire, every lie, legally documented, ready to be exposed. But Nadia wasn't going to do it quietly. She wasn't the silent victim anymore. She wasn't a sob story. She was the storm. She reached out to Marcus's biggest rival, Mr. Rowe, a man Marcus once humiliated in public. Nadia offered him something better than revenge, ownership. Together, they crafted a plan. The shareholders' meeting was set for next Friday. Seline and Marcus would be there, expecting nothing, bragging about numbers that were already sinking. And then Nadia would walk in, not as the wife they'd buried, but as the woman who held the pen to their downfall. The press still believed she was dead. They called it an unconfirmed tragedy. But the cameras would roll. When she stepped out, the silence would break. The world would learn what happens when you try to erase a woman who built the very ground you walk on. The final move was simple. She pulled out the power suit. She never got to wear it. the one meant for the day she was supposed to be introduced as Marcus's partner in the company. She wore it now, not as his wife, but as the force that would destroy him. Her heels clicked down the hallway of the skyscraper boardroom. Just ahead, Seline was laughing with shareholders, smiling, oblivious. Nadia kept walking, one step closer to everything. One step closer to the moment that would bring it all crashing down. The moment Nadia stepped into the grand shareholder meeting room, silence slammed down like thunder. Her white gown flowed like a ghost, the soft fabric clinging to her pregnant belly, glowing under the harsh lights. Every eye snapped toward her. Murmurs died on tongues. A single gasp broke the stillness, sharp, shocked, and raw. Marcus's hand jerked, the glass slipping from his grip and shattering against the marble floor. Seline turned pale, her lips parting, but no air coming through. She stared at Nadia as if seeing a ghost, one she buried but who returned stronger. Nadia didn't blink. She moved through the crowd like she belonged there, like no one could question her right. Her stare pierced everyone, calm and deadly. Marcus's mouth twitched, but no words came. His lie was standing in front of him, radiant, real, and pregnant with truth. Seline clutched the edge of the table, trying to stay upright. No one moved. No one breathed. Nadia didn't need to scream. Her presence screamed for her. It told every secret, burned every fake truth. Her silence was louder than war. Then, without a word, in front of them, Marcus, Seline, the board, the press. She slowly reached into her white leather bag and pulled out a black recorder. The room leaned forward, caught in the storm of what was coming. Marcus's heart pounded so loud, he thought everyone could hear it. Celine's hand trembled, but Nadia, calm, steady, pressed play. A sharp click, then silence, and then his voice filled the air, Marcus's voice, soft, sweet, and full of lies. I swear to you, Seline, believe her, I promise. The room froze, eyes widened, faces twisted in shock. Cameras flashed. Reporters looked around, unsure if this was real. But Nadia didn't flinch. The recording continued. His voice again. She's just a burden now. The baby wasn't even supposed to happen. The crowd gasped. A low cry echoed from one of the shareholders. Celine's voice followed, soft and snake-like. Just make sure she disappears before the baby comes. We'll take over the company, you and me. The air turned heavy. The walls seemed to breathe, pressing in on Marcus. He stared at the recorder like it was alive, like it had teeth. Celine's hand shot out, reaching for it. But Nadia stepped back. Not yet, she said coldly and pressed another button. More voices. More lies. A recording of Seline pretending to cry in a doctor's office. There's no heartbeat, she whispered. I lost the baby. Gasps rippled again. Then a different voice, her friend. But you were never pregnant. You faked everything. Chaos began to stir. Board members exchanged glances. The truth was here, and it was brutal. Nadia pressed the final clip, Marcus bragging to a friend about stealing company funds to cover Celine's fake lifestyle. The room spun, then silence. A silence full of judgment, betrayal, and fear. Then Nadia reached back into her bag, pulled out a thick envelope, and slammed it onto the table. Legal documents, she said. You want to read this next? Marcus swallowed hard. Seline backed away. But Nadia wasn't finished. Not yet. Seline turned sharply, eyes wide, ready to run. But Nadia stepped in her path. Eyes locked, like steel. The room held its breath. Celine's lips quivered. Move, she hissed. But Nadia didn't budge. Her voice was calm, cutting. Why run now, Seline? You loved the spotlight. Cameras clicked. Lights flashed. Nadia reached into her folder and pulled out a stack of photographs. Recognize these? She threw them on the table. Photos of Seline with Marcus's father, laughing, kissing, whispering in dark corners. A hush fell over the room. Marcus looked like he'd been punched. That's not true, Seline began, but Nadia raised a hand. Receipts, she said, tossing paper after paper. Expensive jewelry paid in his name. Delivered to your address. Seline turned red, then white. It wasn't like that. No? Nadia stepped forward. What about the email you sent to the clinic asking for fake ultrasound prints? Another gasp. You used a fake baby to steal my life, my husband, my company. Seline shook her head, words stumbling. It was his idea. Liar, Nadia snapped. You were the poison. But today, it ends. Seline backed into the table, her empire, her mask, all crumbling. Nadia's finger hovered over a remote. Celine's eyes darted. What are you doing? She whispered. Ending the game, Nadia said, pressing the button. The screen behind them lit up. Everyone turned to look. and what they saw next made their hearts stop. The screen flashed white, then revealed the final truth. DNA test results confirmed. Nadia's unborn child is biologically related to Marcus Rowan. The room erupted. Gasps, whispers, shock. Nadia didn't blink. Marcus staggered, reaching for the chair behind him. That's my child," he muttered, as if the words were foreign. Seline stood frozen. "That can't be. That's not possible." Nadia turned, calm and collected. "It is. You said I wasn't supposed to get pregnant, but I did. And I kept our child safe, while you tried to erase us." Marcus's face paled. The board members stood, papers in hand, whispering rapidly. "It also proves Celine's pregnancy was fake," Nadia continued. "There was never a second heir, only lies." Seline dropped into the nearest chair, staring blankly. Her lies had built castles in the sky, and now they were crashing down. "I never meant to hurt," she tried, but her voice cracked. "You didn't just hurt me," Nadia snapped. "You tried to replace me, destroy me, but your lies couldn't kill the truth." Cameras captured every second. Reporters took notes like wildfire. "With this proof," Nadia added, "my child is the rightful heir, not your fantasy." Marcus looked at her, completely broken. "Nadia," he whispered. "I didn't know you. You just didn't care," she interrupted. Seline covered her face. Her power was gone. Her plan had failed. Nadia stood tall, stronger than ever. "It's over," she said, "and the world finally knows." Marcus looked up, face twisted in defeat. But Nadia wasn't done. She looked at him, and her eyes asked one question. What will she do with all this power now? Silence fell again, heavy, sharp. Then a board member cleared his throat. "Miss Nadia," he said, "we'd like to offer you full control of the company. The shares, the title, the power, it's all yours. You've earned it." Nadia's heart raced. Everything she'd built, lost, and fought to reclaim was now before her. And another added, "We'll support any legal action you take against those who wronged you, Marcus, Seline." The power was intoxicating, but it came wrapped in pain. She turned to face them both. Marcus, her once husband, now a shattered man. Seline, a woman who had lied, stolen, betrayed. Nadia remembered everything. The hospital bed, the fear, the silence. "You left me to bleed alone," she said, her voice low. "And now you want forgiveness?" Marcus didn't speak. Seline sobbed, mascara streaming. "Please," she cried, "don't ruin my life." Nadia looked down at her baby bump. "You tried to ruin mine," she said, and almost succeeded. The room watched, frozen. "You have the power to end them," a board member whispered. "What do you want to do?" Nadia took a deep breath. Her heart ached, her soul screamed. She had dreamed of this day. But now that it was here, it felt heavy. Like revenge had a cost, like justice came with blood. She walked toward Marcus, who looked up at her with empty eyes. "This is your last chance," he whispered. "Please." But Nadia didn't move. Her eyes didn't blink, and the world leaned forward, waiting for her answer. Would she show mercy, or would she bury them both? Nadia turned, her voice, loud and cold. "I'll press charges," she said. The room fell deathly still. "Not just against her," she added, pointing at Seline, "but against you, Marcus." A wave of shock crashed over the crowd. Marcus's jaw dropped. "No," he whispered, stepping forward. "Please don't do this." "You did this," she replied. "You betrayed me, you stole from me, and you tried to erase our child." Security stepped into the room. Seline screamed as they grabbed her arms. "Let go of me. This is all a lie. You can't do this." But they did. She was dragged away, kicking, her voice echoing down the halls like a dying siren. Cameras followed every step. Her rage would be replayed across every screen. Marcus backed away, tears forming. "I didn't want it to end like this," he said. "I loved you once." "Once," Nadia replied. "But when I needed you, you vanished." The officers moved toward Marcus. "You'll regret this," he said, voice shaking. "You'll regret everything." But she didn't flinch. "You regret losing control," she said. "I regret ever trusting you." He was handcuffed, his suit wrinkled, his tie undone, his pride gone. Cameras captured the moment as he was led away. Reporters shouted his name. His image, once polished, now ruined, flashed across every screen. Nadia stood still. The world had flipped. She was no longer the broken wife, she was justice. As Marcus disappeared, she didn't smile, she didn't cry. She just stood there, carrying her baby, her power, and the silence of the past. The final blow had landed, but something even bigger was still coming. The cameras flashed like lightning. Nadia stood tall, the white gown now a symbol of war. Her baby bump, once a mark of weakness in their eyes, now stood for power, life, and truth. She faced the press, her voice strong. "I was the wife you tried to drown," she said, her eyes piercing the lens. "Now watch me rise." Silence followed, then whispers of awe. Reporters captured every second. Headlines began forming in real time. Nadia Rowan takes back empire. Fake pregnancy exposed. Justice delivered. Behind her, the board nodded in silent respect. The woman they once doubted now led them. "The lies didn't kill me," she continued. "They made me stronger." Seline's screams faded down the corridor. Marcus's face, broken, handcuffed, would haunt headlines for weeks. But Nadia was done looking back. She had a future to build, for herself and her child. She had reclaimed more than a company. She had reclaimed her name, her strength, her truth, and no one could take that again. But as she turned from the cameras, a question lingered in her heart. The empire was now hers, but at what cost? Could power fill the hole they had carved in her soul? Could victory undo the pain? The screen cut to black, but her voice echoed still, not in rage, but in warning. Nadia had risen, and nothing would ever be the same again. Nadia stood alone in the ruins of her father's empire. The cold glass windows, once sparkling with wealth, now reflected only her defiant stance. The empire was gone, just a memory of power, greed, and corruption. She could hear the echoes of the lavish events and the whispers of deals made in dark corners. It all felt so distant now, like something she used to believe in. But she was no longer that person. She looked at the papers scattered across the floor, the remnants of a dynasty built on lies. She wasn't interested in any of it. She couldn't be. She'd lost too much to this world of betrayal. Nadia felt the weight of everything she'd once been taught: inheritance, legacy, dominance. But it all meant nothing to her now. The luxury that had once been the symbol of success was nothing but a hollow shell. She would burn it all down. The wealth, the power, the empire, none of it would save her. The world she had known would crumble with her choice, but she would rise from its ashes. She'd use her inheritance, the very money that had come from such evil, to build something different, something pure. She'd create shelters for women abused by powerful men, like her father, women like herself. She could no longer stand to be part of the system that had crushed her. And now, she would tear it down from the inside out. The air was thick with the heaviness of her decision. Nadia felt as if she were stepping into an unknown world, unsure of what awaited her, but certain of one thing: she would never be part of the old empire again. The luxury faded from her mind, replaced by a quiet sense of defiance. She wasn't running from the past. She was rebuilding her future. Her eyes hardened, the fire in her heart burning brighter. She was ready to destroy it all, to make it right, for herself and for those who had suffered. And no one, not even the memories of her father's empire, would stop her. The courtroom was silent as the judge's gavel echoed through the room. The sound reverberated off the walls, marking the final blow to Seline and Marcus's twisted empire. They sat side by side, their faces pale, their bodies stiff with dread. It was over. The life they had built on lies, manipulation, and ruthless ambition was crumbling around them. 25 years, the judge declared, for attempted murder and high-level fraud. The words hit harder than any blow. Marcus's face twisted in disbelief, while Seline's eyes filled with rage. But neither of them spoke. There was nothing they could say. The empire they had worked so hard to create, the wealth, the influence, it was all gone now. They were nothing more than criminals, their fate sealed by their own greed. Nadia, standing at the back of the courtroom, watched in silence. Her face was cold, unreadable. She had come to see them pay for what they had done, to her family, and to everyone they had destroyed along the way. But now that the moment had come, there was no satisfaction in her heart, no joy in seeing them brought to justice. She offered no words of victory, no words of condemnation. Her silence was the loudest punishment of all. Seline and Marcus glanced over at her, desperate for any sign of emotion, any recognition of the pain they had caused her. But Nadia only stared back, her gaze empty. She had nothing left to say to them. The courtroom could have exploded in flames, and she wouldn't have moved. Their regret was as irrelevant as their apologies. As the gavel fell again, sealing their fate, Nadia turned and walked out of the courtroom. The sound of the gavel was drowned out by the silence she carried with her. No forgiveness, no closure, only the quiet, relentless sting of betrayal. She didn't need to say a word. Their downfall, their regret, was all the punishment they would ever get. The life of opulence that Nadia had once known felt like a distant dream. The designer gowns, the private jets, the glamorous events, everything she had once prized had lost its luster. It no longer mattered. She had been reborn in the fire of everything she had lost. Now she stood at the center of her new life, building from scratch. Nadia poured every ounce of her strength into her new fashion brand. She was determined to create something that meant more than just a name or a label. It would be a symbol of survival, a reminder that strength came from within, not from the wealth or the status that had once defined her. The journey was grueling. It wasn't easy starting over, especially when the world knew her as the heiress to an empire of corruption. But Nadia wasn't afraid. Every stitch she sewed, every fabric she touched, was a reminder of how far she'd come. She wasn't just making clothes, she was making herself again. The work was difficult, exhausting, but each day she got closer to her goal. She wasn't interested in the glamour anymore. This was about proving something. To herself and to the women who had been silenced, to the ones who had been broken by men like her father. She would make something that would last, something that would empower others to find their own strength. And as she worked, her heart healed. The struggle made her stronger. Nadia was no longer a woman defined by her father's empire. She was a woman who had fought to create her own place in the world, a woman who had reclaimed her life, her voice, and her future. Nadia had never imagined that she would allow herself to love again. After everything she had been through, her father's betrayal, Seline and Marcus's cruelty, her heart had felt too shattered to heal. But love, in its quiet, unassuming way, began to find its way back into her life. David had been a steady presence in her world, a man who had helped her pick up the pieces when everything had seemed lost. He had been there for her when she needed someone to believe in her, someone to see her not as the heir to an empire, but as a woman with her own strength. Nadia didn't fall in love with him because she was trying to replace Elias, the love she had lost. No. She fell in love with David because he allowed her to rebuild, to find herself again. With him, she didn't have to pretend. She didn't have to hide her scars. He saw her, truly saw her, and loved her, not in spite of her pain, but because of how she had overcome it. It wasn't a grand, passionate love. It wasn't about sweeping gestures or declarations. It was quiet, steady, a soft breeze after the storm. And as Nadia allowed herself to open her heart to David, she knew that this love was different. It wasn't about saving her. It was about allowing her to be herself. In the moments they shared together, Nadia found peace. She didn't need the world to know about their love. What mattered was that it was real. And for the first time in a long time, Nadia felt like she was healing. The wind kissed Nadia's face as she stood on the cliff, looking out at the vast ocean. It had been the ocean that had tried to take her once, that had threatened to swallow her whole. But now, standing on its edge, she felt the waves whisper a different story. Her story. The past was still there, lingering in the corners of her mind. The pain, the loss, the betrayal, it all had its place in her journey, but she had won. Not just for herself, but for every woman who had ever been silenced. Every woman who had ever been told she wasn't enough. She had fought. She had survived. And now, she was free. Nadia's eyes misted with tears as she looked down at Serafina, her daughter, standing beside her. She had built this life for them, for both of them. The ocean no longer held the power it once did. The wind that had once carried her fears now lifted her spirit. She whispered softly to herself, "They thought I drowned, but I learned to swim." Her triumph was quiet, but it was hers. Every step she had taken had led her to this moment, this peaceful victory. And as the wind kissed her face once more, Nadia knew that she was no longer the woman who had been destroyed by betrayal. She was the woman who had rebuilt herself from the ashes, and nothing would ever take that away from her. So that's the story for today. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories. On a scale from 0 to 10, how would you rate this story? And let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to know. We'll see you in the next video. Until then, stay happy and take care.